We're back on the Sean Hannity Show.
183 to back, copy active shooter, UCC 1140 Umpqua College Road. So we have a report of one person shot, UCC 1140 Umpqua College Road, an active shooter. The UCC, this is going to be the Snyder Hall. Somebody is outside one of the doors, shooting through the door. There is a female in the computer lab. We do have one female that has been shot at this time. 1174 medical aid. This is for an active shooter at UCC. 1174 medical aid. We have a report of one person shot. UCC 1140 Umpqua College Road, an active shooter.
All right, that was some of the communications yesterday during the tragedy out in Oregon at this community college. And we're learning more about Chris Harper Mercer, and we're learning more about the gunman. People recall him as a recluse, close to his mother. He was apparently anxious, had anxiety issues, loved guns, on and on and on. Some claim he was a Nazi. There's some reports that he had an anti-Christian bias. Multiple reports that he said to people before he shot them, "Are you a Christian?" If they said yes, they would shoot him in the head. If they said no or didn't answer, he would just shoot him in the leg. An angry young man filled with hate. You know, the president wants to blame the guns, but I keep saying if we want our classroom safe, well, we ought to put retired policemen in there that are armed, that protect our students the way he has protected himself. Not one piece of gun legislation that the president has proposed would in any way have impacted any of the shootings that we report on and have been talking about. Joining us now to get into the mind of these evil people is Dr. Michael Wellner, forensic psychiatrist. He is spearheading landmark research to develop a societal standard of evil and crime, which people can participate in, by the way. It's at a website, depravitystandard.org. Also with us is Ron Martinelli. He's a retired police officer, forensic legal analyst, certified medical investigator. And welcome both of you to the show.
Good afternoon, Sean. How are you?
You know, I know that there are psychiatric disorders. I know that people are influenced by some outside things. But can we just determine that anybody that would walk into a classroom and kill innocent young adults or children, isn't that by definition sociopathic? Isn't that mental illness? Isn't that evil incarnate, Doctor?
I think that it's hard enough to distinguish among these people in terms of diagnosis that it's easier for us to understand that the common denominator of a person who targets complete strangers, either because they're trying to kill as many people before they are stopped, or because they have some ideological affiliation, a genuine one. I'll make that distinction in a minute. It is that they aspire to be a killer as a life choice. And as peculiar and perverse as that sounds, this is why this is a distinctively American cultural problem, because we have a celebrity-driven society in which folks who are irrelevant come to recognize that as men, they can come to be seen as larger than life if they demonstrate a catastrophic scale of destructiveness. And a society that rewards outrageousness with attention on the scale of how outrageous you can be. The more outrageous you are, the more you're rewarded with attention, the more destructive you are as a man,
but what do
the more you're rewarded with that larger thing. But it starts with that motivation, whether a person is sick or not. That's a key distinction. The decision to go forward with it relates more to a person's crisis than it does a diagnosis. Some people may have one diagnosis. Some people may have another diagnosis. Some people may have no diagnosis. But without that motivation at the core, it never starts. That's why most psychiatrically ill people don't do this. It's a mistake to attach this to say, well, this is just sick. No. It's deviant, and sometimes it's sick and deviant, and sometimes it's just deviant.
Dr. Martinelli, your take.
Well, actually, I agree with everything that the doctor said. I would add that, and I've written about these ticking time bombs, as I refer to them, on the drronmartinelli.com site. These people have got a lot of pent-up anger, a lot of pent-up rage, and they are usually self-segregated or self-isolated from the mainstream. They have very poor, social networks. They usually do sometimes live with parents and things like that, and by the way, the parent tends to be intimidated by this person. Nothing happens in a void here, Sean, okay? And what happens is that these ticking time bombs are barraged by all of the media and all of the different things that are happening, and we can talk about what those things are that they pay attention to, what resonates with them, and what happens with them is they wait until there is some sort of precipitating event, and then they blow up. And once they blow up, they have a design. Schools are a great location for this type of design of violence because it's what we call a soft target area. The students are encapsulated into classrooms. They're easily rounded up. They're easily held hostage. They're easily shot and killed. Law enforcement, usually there is no law enforcement presence, no armed presence, and this college is a great example. One security guard for 3,000 people, and he only had a can of mace. Rural areas are especially good because they know that the law enforcement response is extended, and so they can do a lot of damage during a very quick time span. And this is what you're seeing here today with this particular thing that happened yesterday.
So all this talk and politicizing it, if somebody has this desire in their heart, aren't they going to find a way to do it?
Well, absolutely, and the president has talked about this is the only country where we have these problems, and I have an article on the Dr. Ron site called "Mental Health Disorders and Gun Control," where I lay out all of the European and a couple of the Asian mass murders by active shooters and also active stabbers. In Japan, where they have almost no guns, we have active stabbers, and in Europe we do have active shooters just like we have in the United States. But the key thing, basically, as far as a criminal psychological profile, is very much what the doctor is telling you as well. So I heartily agree with what he has to say.
All right,
I think that there are a couple things just to quickly add, and that is that while I can appreciate that in certain instances, if some individual doesn't have access to a gun at a critical point, that an event might not happen, and that if they don't have access to a certain gun, then the attack might be more, or I should say less destructive. I think it's critical for your listeners to appreciate that many, I don't want to say all, but many of the folks who undertake these mass killing events have no criminal record, have no psychiatric history, and so even if laws were rejigged to try to capture folks with some sort of registration period, you have a lot of people who were unremarkable until a point of their destructiveness, where their relatively quiet, simmering anger was otherwise not expressed and not known to many people. And they can get access to guns even under reconfigured regulation. So I'm not so much absolute about this, but I think we also have to appreciate the population that we're dealing with. And I mean, just from my own experience with James Holmes, I worked on a case, I studied, I was part of the trial team, the prosecution team, so I can't tell you much. But what I can tell you, and this relates to what Dr. Martinelli was saying, he specifically picked a target, accounting for police response, accounting for the length of time of police response. And this came out of trial, so I'm not disclosing undisclosed information. So people also need to appreciate there's a long fuse, and that during the time of that fuse, the aspiring killer thinks about different targets and actually does contemplate the idea, well, gee, this is a rural area. And no, this is a soft target. Yes.
Sean and Dr. Can I chip in here for just a second?
They take that into account.
Yeah, Doctor?
Can I make a comment on things that people need to pay attention to? We look at basically 4 presentations and of the person or what they're demonstrating in public and amongst others. We look at verbal presentations, what do they say and how do they say it and when do they say it. We look at physical presentations. Do they dress a certain way? Is the dress militaristic? Is it a strange dress? Is it out of the norm dress? Number 3, which is most important, is behavioral presentations. How do they behave? And the last one, especially if there's a mental disorder, is there a psychological presentation where they are demonstrating some sort of psychosis? And we look at all 4 of those things, and that's where we start making evaluations and analysis, even as just neighbors or relatives or friends or schoolmates or associates, that there might be something wrong with this person. And this is how we can become more proactive in trying to at least identify people that might have serious life stressors that could be a ticking time bomb.
All right, I want to thank you both for being with us and shedding some light on this. Michael Werner, Dr. Werner, thank you. And Dr. Martinelli, thank you.